Okay, happy Sabbath. Today is April 25, 2020, and we are streaming live on YouTube, Dragon is Wrath, and also doing Zoom video conferencing. All right. We'll continue our studies about what is happening in the sanctuary. All right. Last week we were doing about how to make our election sure, and that we have to make sure that our character is ready, right? When our character is ready, we will be able to be elected, and then we are called, so that we are called to go through the Sunday law crisis. And that Sunday law crisis is where the final test comes, right? But to be able to go to the final test through the Sunday law crisis, we have to have our character ready. And that character is ready, and that character is tested at the image of the beast test. All right? So that's where we'll go. That's where we'll go now, and we'll just review a little bit of what we did last week. All right, let me go there. Bear with me because I'm handling two computers here. All right, hold on. Oh, oops, all right. Okay, this is where we were ending up last week, and we know that there's two institutions that was established in Eden, and it's marriage and the Sabbath. All right, and these twin institutions will be made void in the time of the end. Right, it's marriage and Sabbath. Okay, all right, we know that it's marriage was made on Friday, and then Sabbath was made on the seventh day. All right, but these twin institutions are being made void. So we know that the Friday, which is the marriage, is being made void by the image of the beast test, and also Sabbath is made void by the image to the beast test, right? So it's almost like they're twin institutions. They're the same. They're about Sabbath, but they're also a little bit different. One is the image of the beast. One is the image to the beast. Image of the beast is when church and state joins together, where church controls the state, and the church asks for the state to make a law. Right? That's the same thing that we notice at the time of Jesus. At the time of Jesus, when Caiaphas asked Pilate, right? It was not Pilate that wanted to crucify Jesus. He really wasn't that invested in trying to figure out what was happening with Jesus. Who was really wanting to have Jesus crucified killed, right? Is the church, which is Caiaphas. So the church controlled the state, right, to crucify Jesus on the Friday, right? And then on the Sabbath, the church asked for the state to put a Roman seal on the tomb to keep Jesus in the grave. Well, we can see that that's like an image to the beast test. That's like a Sunday law, right? That you are not allowed to worship on a Sabbath. That's a type of a Sunday law, right? So then we went to this slide showing that what happened at the time of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is also showing us what happens at the Sunday law, right? Because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to come and show up at the plain of Dura, where the image of the beast, the image of gold was set up. And when the music was made, they were all to worship, right? The image that the king made, right? So they had to worship when there was a cry made by the herald, right? A cry was made loud so that they can hear the music and they can worship the image that was made by the king. All right. Okay. And remember, the Lord has shown me clearly. And this we know this passage very well. We've read this so many times, but sometimes we kind of miss it as to the complete understanding of it. The Lord has shown me clearly that the image of the beast will be formed before probation closes, right? The image of the beast is church and state, right? That's when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to hear the herald cry aloud, and they had to worship the image that the king had made, right? Worship the image that the king had made, right? But that test will be the greatest test for the people of God, by which their eternal destiny will be decided. So the eternal destiny is decided at the image of the beast test, when they are seeing that the church is controlling the state, right? But how is it that their eternal destiny is actually tested? How is it that their eternal destiny is tested at the time when they had to bow down to that image, when they heard the music, when the herald was crying aloud? How was their eternal destiny decided, right? Was it because they understood the meaning of church and state? Was it because they understood the meaning of church and state? We can see it in this Daniel 3 verse 16, right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. We are not careful. What happens? What happened? What do you see from this that shows that their eternal destiny has been decided? They are not careful in answering, right? They have made up their mind. Their character is set, right? That's why their eternal destiny is decided at the time of the image of the beast test. Because why? Because they're like the wise virgins. Their oil is already enough at midnight, right? The Holy Spirit no longer has to work on their character anymore. It's not a matter of continually working the work of sanctification. Their character is now set, right? Set for what? Set so that they can now go through the time of the fiery furnace, right? The fiery furnace is like the Sunday law, right? The wise virgins, they understood the call, and their character was ready. They needed no more oil. Besides, there was no more oil for sale. Their character was ready. So their eternal destiny was decided at the time of the image of the beast test is because their character was set for, to get ready for eternity, right? So that they can go through the Sunday law, right? And there you go. That's the Sunday law, a Sunday law test, right? The fiery furnace that was burning 7 times hotter, right? And they found out that their garments were not burned, right? Because they have garments that are fireproof, right? Yeah. Their character is now burned and made purified, right? And we know that that story lines up specifically because for us to understand that the image of the beast test is the one test that will determine our destiny is not specifically because we understand church and state relationship. It's more than that. It's because we understand that what? Our character is already set. Set for what? Set to go through the image to the beast test, which is the Sunday law, right? Right. So we are being prepared, right? Sanctification, justification is a preparation for us so that our character is ready to go through the Sunday law. All right? To go through Sunday law. All right. So now we'll go to, that's where we were last week. And now we'll go to the study of where we are going to go this week is right here. Let me go to this week's study. All right. So this week what we're going to cover is we're going to go back and study about the Great Tribulation, the 7 plagues, and how we can see it during the time of line upon line with the time of Nebuchadnezzar's siege on Jerusalem, and also the siege of Titus in 70 AD. All right? So we can see the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation is after Michael stands up, right? Michael stand up, and after that there's going to be a Great Tribulation that such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, right? And now we will see that Ellen White will show that this time of the 7 plagues has been typified by the siege of Jerusalem during the time of Zedekiah and the time of Titus, right? The time of Zedekiah is that not when Daniel was taken away to Babylon, but Zedekiah after that, that time of Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and then Zedekiah. All right, that's when the temple was burned. Right, the temple was burned. The city and the walls was taken down. Right, the people had to be taken to Babylon. And they were taken to Babylon for 70 years, right? They were taken to Babylon 70 years. Okay, all right. All right. Then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Right? This is what Jesus said. This is what Jesus said, right? That's the 7 last plagues. That's the Great Tribulation, right? All right. Let me see. I gotta. All right, that's the 7 last plagues. All right. Okay. Right. The 7 last plagues is the Great Tribulation, right? Let's read from Signs of the Times, 1894. When warning his disciples of the destruction of Jerusalem, which did not take place until 40 years after his ascension. 40 years after the ascension of Jesus. He said, But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. So the 7 plagues is also similar to what happened during the siege of Titus. All right? In accordance with his instruction, the followers of Christ were enabled to depart from the besieged city and escape to the mountains, not taking their flight either in the winter nor upon the Sabbath day. After the death of Christ, the disciples rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. All right? Yeah. So the 7 last plagues is like the type of what happened during the siege. All right? Okay. Yes?
Jared mau masuk.
Oh, yeah. I think, yeah, he's already in now. Yeah, I see that he's already in. Saya udah lihat dia udah masuk. Okay. All right, no problem. All right. Okay, so we continue. As the angels of God cease to hold in check the fierce winds of human passion, and all the elements of strife will be let loose. Right? What is that? That's the time of the 7 plagues. The whole world will be involved in ruin more terrible than that which came upon Jerusalem of old. It's going to be similar, but even worse than what happened in the time of Jerusalem. All right? Okay. Was it predicted already? Yeah, it was predicted, right? Jesus predicted it. Where was he when he predicted it? Well, he was, remember, he was crying for Jerusalem when he went into Jerusalem, right? He went into Jerusalem, and at the crest of Olivet, he cried for Jerusalem. He says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem," because he was crying of what is going to happen when Titus comes. When Titus comes, he looked at Jerusalem and he sees the destruction is going to happen, right? And then when he was carrying the cross, the women of Jerusalem was crying, but he was actually sad for the women of Jerusalem who was crying for him, because they said, "You're crying for me now, but you're actually going to have to cry for your own self when Titus comes, right? At 70 AD, when your city will be destroyed, right? Okay, right, all right." And then he made this prediction when he was on the Mount of Olives, right? Yeah. And he said, the one stone will not be on top of the other stone. And when will that be? Within one generation, from the time that the leaves start to bud, when the outpouring of the Holy Spirit comes. So when the outpouring of the Holy Spirit comes, from then it's one generation away. Within one generation, this generation shall see it. Okay? Because then you will see the abomination of desolation come. When you see the abomination of desolation comes in and stands in the place where it ought not to be, you have to run to the mountains, right? And hope that, pray that it will not be in the winter time or on the Sabbath day, because there's going to be a tribulation, all right? Okay. That happens during the time of Jerusalem in 70 AD, and it's going to happen in our time as well, all right? Okay. All right. Thousands perish from famine and pestilence. Natural affections seem to have been destroyed. Husbands rob their wives, and wives their husbands. Children would be seen snatching the food from the mouth of their aged parents. The question of the prophet, can a woman forget her sucking child? Receive the answer within the walls of the doomed city. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden their own children, and were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. So Isaiah and Jeremiah had predicted this, right? It was a prophecy that was fulfilling that was made by Isaiah and Jeremiah. Obviously, Jesus already made a prediction also. John the Baptist already made a prediction, right, about what's going to happen to them. All right. Again was fulfilled the warning prophecy given 14 centuries before. Again was fulfilled. Why did Ellen White say again was it fulfilled? Why was it again? Because it had happened before. It happened before. There was a siege in Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar before. What happened at the time of Nebuchadnezzar is happening again at the time of the Romans coming in. Again it's going to happen, right? You know what? You are going to have to be so hungry and so stressed during your siege that you are actually going to eat your children. Yeah, that already happened before, right? And that prediction was also given in Deuteronomy 28, verse 56 and 57, right? You're gonna eat your children. Because of that, I decided to go and look at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. And when I looked at it, these things that happen in Deuteronomy 28 sound so familiar to me and should be familiar to everybody, because it's essentially the plagues of Egypt. It's like the plagues of Egypt is what happened during Deuteronomy, when you read Deuteronomy 28. And Deuteronomy 28 is talking about the siege of Jerusalem, and that you are going to eat your children. Right? It's going to be such a stressful time that you're going to eat your children. It's amazing, right? And that is actually typical of what is going to happen in the antitypical, last 7 plagues, right? It's going to be such a stressful time, but those who are not prepared will do the unthinkable that they never thought they could ever do. They will actually do it. All right? Was it predicted also? Remember this story? For 7 years, a man in Jerusalem was crying what? Woe! A voice from the east, a voice from the west, a voice from the 4 winds, a voice against Jerusalem, against the temple. Oh, the 4 winds. Just before the 7 plagues comes, is going to be 4 winds coming from all directions, right? 4 winds are going to come. It's going to be against Jerusalem, and it's against the temple, against the bridegroom and the bride, a voice against the whole people. And what happened to this person? He died in that siege. And the next sentence, Ellen White said, not one Christian was killed during that siege. Remember? Not one Christian was. Right? So the siege of Jerusalem happened, and is a type for which we can study and be prepared for our time for the 7 last plagues. All right? Okay. But where do we find this in the Bible, where the parents will eat their children? It's in Deuteronomy, but it's also in Leviticus. Okay, the first mention is in Leviticus. In Leviticus 26, verse 27 to 35. What is this? This is part of the 7 times, right? The 7 times scattering, right? There's 4 of them. This is the last one of them. I'm just going to read a little bit about, and if you are not all for this, hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, if you do not follow my commandments, what will happen? I will chastise you. I will chastise you 7 times. Remember, chastise? Chastise. Remember the admonition to the Laodicean church? I will counsel you to buy me of gold, and then I will rebuke you. And then what happens? If you still do not want to follow me, I'm going to have to chastise you, right? I'm going to have to punish you First, I counsel you, right? Counsel you nicely. And then I have to rebuke you a little bit stronger. But if you don't understand still, what's going to happen? I'm going to have to chastise you. I'm going to have to discipline you. I'm going to have to, what? I'm going to have to send you the 7 times scattering, right? And what's going to happen to you? You shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters shall ye eat. Wow. Jumping down to verse 34. Why? Because you do not let your land enjoy her Sabbath. It needed to rest. It needed to rest for 1 year after it been worked for 6 years, right? For when you work it for 6 years, it's got to rest, because it too has to enjoy its Sabbath rest, right? We know this. This is part of the scattering and the gathering. This is the 7 times, right? So it was already predicted in the law of Moses. The law of Moses, already showed that this is what is going to happen to you. You have to be scattered 7 times, right? That's according to the law of Moses. If you sin, what happens? Punishment 7 times, all right? Punishment 7 times. Okay. Where was the law of Moses kept? Where was the law of Moses kept? In the sanctuary. Now we go back to the sanctuary now. Where was the law of Moses kept? It's in the most holy place, right? It's in the most holy place. It's right next to the altar, right? In the most holy place, right? Okay. Now this 7 times here, it is something that has been warned to the Jews. You know what? You're gonna eat your children. And in Deuteronomy it says you're gonna eat your children. And I would imagine that all the Israelites would say, impossible. How are we gonna eat our children? We're not gonna eat our children. And you know what? When they were under stress, under the siege, where there's no food, what happens to them? They ate their children. Even though they probably would have always said, there's no way we can eat our children. But when they were so stressed, they actually ate their children, right? They did not understand how wretched and miserable their flesh is. They don't understand how bad, their, what we call the unknown part of their self is, right? They don't even understand how wretched and miserable, poor, blind, and naked their flesh is, their carnal nature, right? They don't understand it. And that story is shown in that same principle is shown with Peter also, right? With Peter, right? Remember Peter? Jesus said, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. Even before the cock crows 2 times. Before the cock crows 2 times, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter said, no way. There's no way I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow you to the grave. If somebody wants to come and capture you, I'm going to take my sword. I'm going to fight them. Right? I'm going to follow you to the grave. Impossible. I will never leave you. And a few hours later, what did he do? He denied his Jesus, just as predicted. The Israelites, the Jews says, impossible. There's no way we're going to eat our children. During the time of stress, they ate their children, right? Okay, so Peter, what's wrong with Peter then? Why did he actually do what he did? Peter had just declared that he knew not Jesus, but he now realized with bitter grief how well his Lord knew him and how accurately he had read his heart, the falseness of which was unknown even to himself. he did not know how wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked his flesh was. His carnal flesh, right? He does not understand it. He cannot see it, right? So what happens? He'd understand his condition. So what happens when there's a big stress comes to him? The things that he doesn't know inside of him comes out. He can actually do something that he says, I will never do. He actually, he denied his Lord, even though just a few hours before, he says, impossible, I will never do that. Okay, it's unknown to him. Right? So where do we see this in the sanctuary? This is his unknown sin. This is sin within me. According to Romans, that's sin within me. That's the unknown sin. Our unknown sin in our flesh is so much bigger than the sins that we can see, right? That we have to repent of. We have known sins. We says, oh, you know what? I actually have lied. Oh, you know what? I actually have stole something. Oh, I have done this. That's a sin that you know, right? That's the sin that you actually can repent of because you know of that sin. But what about your unknown sin? How is it dealt in the sanctuary? Your miserable, wretched, poor, blind, and naked flesh. How is it dealt in the sanctuary? We look at it in Leviticus 4. You can open your Bibles into Leviticus 4, right? But just the summary of it, Leviticus 4 just says, if you have sin through ignorance, right? Sin through ignorance. If you have sin through ignorance, what happens? If you have sin through ignorance, that sin, and it is made known to you, what you have to, for the leaders and the congregation, they have to bring a bullock, and that bullock is killed. And what happens to the blood? It's sprinkled. How many times? 7 times, right? Remember, this is the sin that is unknown to you, and that is made to you. What happens to it? It's sprinkled 7 times in front of the veil. Okay, I have the veil open, but that veil is supposed to be closed, all right? Okay, that veil is supposed to be closed. It's sprinkled 7 times near the altar of incense, right? And then what happens? Then the blood is touched on the horns. So now these sins are actually taken into the holy place for the sins of the people. Right? Now it has defiled the sins have defiled the temple. Right? So during the Day of Atonement, once a year, what happens? The high priest has to come and kill a bullock for himself, but he also kills a goat for God's people, and he kills them and brings their blood, actually one at a time. First the bullock, and then after that the goat, right? And what does he do with that goat? Okay, well, right? This is during the Day of Atonement, okay? Right? Now the veil is open. During the Day of Atonement, now the priest can go in. And what's in there? What's in the most holy place? There's the Ark of the Covenant, and within the Ark of the Covenant is the 10 Commandments, is the rod of Moses that budded, and the manna, right? But what is also inside the most holy place? The law of Moses is right there too, right? The law of Moses, okay? So the blood has to be sprinkled how? During the Day of Atonement, how is the blood? Now you go to Leviticus 16. You go to Leviticus 16, verse 1 to 19. If you read, I'm not going to put it all up here. We're going to do this later, okay? We're going to do this later, but this is just a summary of it, right? Leviticus 16, verse 1 to 19, okay? the high priest has to go in there, and he takes blood from the bullock, and then later on he takes it from the goat. And what does he do? He sprinkles it on the mercy seat. Okay? Right? He sprinkles it on the mercy seat. How many times did he sprinkle it on the mercy seat?
7 times.
No, he sprinkles it only one time, eastward. It's not 7 times. He only does it one time. Okay? It's only one time that he sprinkles it on the mercy seat, towards the east. And he's doing this to cleanse the sanctuary of the what? Of the sins that has been transferred there. Okay? To cleanse the sanctuary, he sprinkles blood on the mercy seat one time. And then after that, what does he do? He sprinkles it near the what? Near the altar. Right? But because what is there? What is outside of the what is outside of the Ark of the Covenant? The law of Moses. And how many times did he sprinkle it for the law of Moses? 7 times, right? He sprinkles it 7 times. So what does this mean? Remember, the law of Moses says that if you sin, you have to be scattered how many times? 7 times. That's why when the high priest goes into the most holy place to cleanse the tabernacle, he sprinkles it on the law of Moses 7 times. But what about the 10 Commandments? The 10 Commandments says if you sin, you have to die, right? So how many times that it's talking about the eternal death? How many times do you have to die the eternal death? 1 time. 1 time. That's why on the mercy seat it's sprinkled only once, right? It's only sprinkled once, and that's your known sin. The 10 Commandments shows you your known sins. But the law of Moses is like your unknown sin. Your unknown sin is as if it's 7 times bigger. Your wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked state of your flesh, of your carnal flesh, is 7 times bigger than your known sins. Right? It's a lot bigger. And then after that, what happens? He has to go, and then he goes he takes the blood during the Day of Atonement. He takes the blood to cleanse the people, right? He still has to cleanse the people, remember? So for some reason, and we'll go into this later on when we study about the sanctuary, he still has to cleanse the people. And he puts the blood on the altar round about, on the altar of incense, on the horns, right? Because that's where the sins had been transferred to the holy place, right? So to cleanse the people, he has to put the blood on the altar. And then what does he do that after that? To cleanse the people of their unknown sin, he has to sprinkle it 7 times again, right? So you see these 7 times? The 7 times that is also in the sanctuary. This is so important, right? This is just to show we have to understand what is our nature and how wretched and miserable and poor, blind, and naked we are, that we do not understand this because it is a hidden, unknown sin. Unless it is actually atoned for during the Day of Atonement, it is possible that during the 7 plagues, if it is not atoned for, we're going to eat our children. Right? For those who do not have their unknown sins atoned for, they're going to eat their children. Spiritually speaking. They don't know what is in them. They can do something that they do not understand how they could have done it. Right? Because they do not understand how wretched their flesh is. Okay? All right. All right. Okay. Any questions so far? Do you see the 7 times? The known sins and your unknown sins, and how it is that it is dealt with in the sanctuary. You know how it is, how we can see it, because all these dealings of sin we can also see in the sanctuary, right? The dealings of sin, because that's how sin is blotted out, and that is how sin will be transferred to the sanctuary. And then after on the Day of Atonement, will that sin be transferred to now? To the scapegoat, right? To the scapegoat, right? Okay. So, so we go back to the time of the siege of Jerusalem, right? The siege of Jerusalem. What happened during the time of siege of Jerusalem, right? And Nebuchadnezzar came and sieged Jerusalem. Had that been predicted already? Yes, it's already been predicted. Where was it predicted? Obviously in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Okay, but there's another prediction given during the time of Ezekiel, and it's Ezekiel 4 verse 4 to 6, right? It's the 390 and the 40, right? It's about the siege of Jerusalem. Okay, here's the siege of Jerusalem right here, 587. Okay, the siege of Jerusalem, 587, during the time of Babylon. Right, here you go, Babylon. I have all these dates, but it's okay. Just because I used an old slide, I didn't want to just erase all of that. But just concentrate on this number right here, 587, the siege of Jerusalem. This is during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. They are going to eat their children during this siege also. All right? That's been predicted. Okay? And Ezekiel already predicted about it. He says, lie on your left side for Israel. How many days? 390 days, right? Okay. Because I'm going to siege Jerusalem. You go to Ezekiel 4. Like, you put a tile, and on that tile, right? On that tile, put what? Put the city on it, all right? You put the city on it, okay? Right here, you put the city on that tile. And then what do? You put a iron pan around it. So you siege that city, right? You siege that city. There you go. Here we go. We put an iron pan right next to it. That's the siege of Jerusalem, all right? But then you have to lie on your left side, right? You have to. So the siege of Jerusalem is predicted with a time prophecy that Ezekiel says that you have to lie for the sins of Israel 390 days. Okay, here is 390 days lying on his left side for 390 days. Okay, and going back from 587, it goes all the way to 977 during the time of Jeroboam, right there, the time of Jeroboam. Okay. Let's see. All right. You can see it starts with the time of Jeroboam. Okay, 390 years. And then for Judah, you lie on your right side 40 days. 1 day for each year. Okay, it's so for 40 years. And when you look at it, it goes back to Bethel. What happened at Bethel? Josiah, the good king, he actually took down the altars. What altars, right? These are the altars here. Which altars did he take down? The altar that was made by Jeroboam, right? The altar that was by Jeroboam. And Jeroboam, remember, what did he do? He made 2 golden altars. And these were taken down by Josiah. 390 years later, siege of Jerusalem. 40 years later, since these altars were taken down, it was the siege of Jerusalem. It was already predicted. Okay? What does this have to do with anything then? What we're saying is that the siege is already predicted. And it's also predicted during the time of, all right, the time of Daniel, all right? And we see that there's going to be a Sabbath rest. The Sabbath rest that you did not keep your Sabbath resting. Because of that, you have to be taken into Babylon, because you have not rested your land. Every 6 years you work on it, you do not let it rest on the 7th year. Okay? So we'll put that on a line. We've seen this many times, right? From the time of Saul, 490 years, till the time of Daniel, the time of Jehoiakim, right? Is 490 years. The kings of Israel and the kings of Judah did not let the land rest for 490 years. Because of that, they have to go to, right? That's 70 years after Manasseh. But they had to go to Babylon, also had to suffer 70 years. But Daniel had to go into captivity for 70 years. Yeah? 70 years is because they did not keep the land resting. Right? So the land had to rest it for 70 years. All right? Until Cyrus' succession. So and Cyrus gave them the decree that they can go back to Jerusalem. All right? And during the time of Jehoiachin, right? It's 140 years because they destroyed the city and the walls. So the city 70 and the walls 70, so it's 140. Right? The city and the walls had to rest until the time of Artaxerxes. Right? This is the Sabbath rest. You break the Sabbath rest, you have to suffer 7 times. Okay? And the time of Zedekiah is the temple, right? The temple was taken down, right? The temple had to rest also for 70 years until the decree of Darius. All these 70, these are the Sabbath rest, the 70 years. Okay, the 70 years that they had to suffer for the 490 years that the king did not let their land rest. Okay? All right. The land had to rest, the temple had to rest, the cities had to rest, the walls had to rest, you know? Like there's 4 of them. Okay? All right. Okay, so this is, the host, they were taken out, right? The host was taken out. Let's see, the host was taken out right there for 70 years, right? Because the land had to rest. Okay, so we see this in application. Obviously, we see this application very easy to see that from the time that Eden was, defiled, right? It had to be, this earth had to rest also, but it was worked on, right? Okay, let's see. Until the time of Jesus comes, right? And the time of the Sunday law. We see the time of the Sunday law happens before that, before Jesus comes, followed by the last 7 plagues. So from the time of the Sunday law to the time that Jesus comes, there's a time of trouble, right? So from the siege of Jerusalem, from the time of the siege of Jerusalem till the time that the temple was taken down, there's a time of trouble, right? There's a time when the people ate their children. They ate their children, right? From the time of the siege until the time that the temple was taken down, there was a time of trouble for the people in Jerusalem, right? And we know that this is 6,000 years, and this is the millennium, all right? The millennium is the 1,000 years. The 1,000 years of Sabbath rest, because the land, the earth has not kept its Sabbath, right? So, but that's why the people had to be taken to heaven, right? So that the land will rest for 1,000 years. Right? Before they were taken to heaven, there's a time of trouble, right? Between the Sunday law and the time they're taken to heaven, there's a time of trouble. That time of trouble is when the siege of Jerusalem. That's like a type of siege of Jerusalem. All right. Okay. All right. We've done this many times already before, but just a review. Okay. All right. Jesus also predicted, just like during the time that Jerusalem was being about to be sieged, right? During the time that Jerusalem was about to be sieged, and that person was crying for 7 years, woe unto Jerusalem, woe unto the land, woe unto the what? The bridegrooms and the brides. Jesus was also saying, woe unto the what? Woe unto the scribes and the Pharisees. How many times did he say it? 7 times. Wow, 7 times, right? Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you have killed the prophets. Now you're gonna kill me. And now your house is left unto you desolate. Okay, your house will be left unto you desolate. Jesus already predicted that your temple is going to be made desolate. All right. Now, how is it that it's a type of a Sunday law, right? It's a type of a Sunday law, right? Yeah, because what did they do? You know, when Jesus was brought in front of Pilate, Pilate did not really want to kill him. You know, it was the Jews that wanted to kill him, right? So Pilate asked them, hey, you know what? Maybe I can release him. But you know, I'm pretty sure that they're going to release him because you know they should choose him instead of this guy named Barabbas. But instead they chose Barabbas, right? The fake son of God, the fake son of the Father. So they chose the wrong Lord of the Sabbath, right? They chose the wrong Lord of the Sabbath, and because of that, they could not really keep the Sabbath. So even though they were in Jerusalem worshiping on the Sabbath, they were destroyed on the Sabbath day because they were worshiping and following the wrong Lord of the Sabbath. So it is like Jesus. Okay, this is a type of what happened to Jesus. Jesus, when he was in the wilderness, right? We did this last night. How was he tested on worship? How was Jesus tempted on worship when he was in the wilderness? Satan said to him what? Why don't you worship me, and I will give you all these kingdoms, right? You worship me. So Jesus was tempted on worship. Okay, my question is, was Jesus tempted to worship on a Sunday and not a Sabbath? How was Jesus tempted about worship? Was it really about worshiping on a Sabbath? Was that his test? What was his test? He answered, thou shalt only worship God. It's not about the Sabbath. It's about who you worship. So the test is not specifically about the Sabbath. It is about who you worship. Do you worship the true Lord of the Sabbath? If you worship the true Lord of the Sabbath, the sign will show that you will keep the Sabbath, right? It will show that you will then keep the Sabbath, no matter what, because you worship the true Lord of the Sabbath. The problem with the Jews is that they chose the wrong, right? Oops. All right. They chose the wrong Lord. They chose the wrong Son of God, the Son of the Father, right? They chose Barabbas. That's why they could not truly keep the Sabbath, right? So they were destroyed even when they were keeping the Sabbath, right? Okay, all right. All right. So this is what happened during Cestus and Titus. Remember the abomination of desolation? Abomination of desolation came. When did Cestus come? He came on the Feast of Tabernacle in 66 AD. All right, that's when he came. 66 AD. And then when did Titus come? At the time of the Passover in 70 AD. All right, that's when Cestus first came. And then when Titus came, he came at the Passover on the 14th day of the first month. Right, he came. That's the time of Titus. Okay. How many years is that apart? From 66 to 70. From the Feast of Tabernacles to the time of the Passover. How many years is that?
3.5.
3.5 years, all right. Wow. 1260. Yeah. It is significant, right? We'll put that on a line and we'll see how significant that is. Okay, that's 3.5. You know, but this has to be a type of also what happens, right? This is also going to be a time of what's going to happen during the time of the siege of Babylon. Remember the time of siege of Babylon? We did this a long time ago, but I'm going to review this really quickly, all right? All right, this is the siege of Babylon, right? So the Babylonians came, right? Okay, that's the verse. The Babylonians came, right? Do I have it up there? All right, hold on. Okay, all right. The Babylonian came. It started on the 10th day of the 10th month on 587, the year 587. Babylonians came, all right? But now the Jewish people, right? The Jewish people said, oh boy, we are being sieged by the Babylonians. Who did they ask for help? Now this is the time of Zedekiah. Remember, this is time of Babylonians. You know, Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians came. Who did they ask for help to come and help them? Egypt came to help them, right? So Egypt came to help them, right? But they did something really bad. They did something really bad. On the first day of the 7th month, they had to have a year of release. It's Shemitah. You know, on the first day of the 7th month, what are they supposed to do? On every first day of the 7th month, what do they have to do? On the year of Shemitah, they had to release their slaves. Because their slaves also had to what? Every 7 years. The slaves had to rest. The slaves had to have a Sabbath rest every 7 years on the first day of the 7th month. The Jews did not keep their Sabbath rest. Remember? Yeah? You know, at that time, right? They did not keep their Sabbath rest. They did not let their slaves rest. Okay? Right? Then what happened? Then Pharaoh backed away. And then the Babylonians came again and breached the wall. Right? Yeah. And then Nebuzaradan, the general, came, and then they burned the temple down. Right? So between the beginning of the siege and the end of the siege, you know, Pharaoh came and Pharaoh left. Pharaoh came and distracted the Babylonians. Right? Remember Cestus? Cestus came, and for some reason, he left. So it's like the Babylonians came and the Babylonians left. Cestus came,
No, Egypt.
right? Because why? In this time, because Egypt. Because of Egypt. Okay, what's the significance of Egypt? Who is Egypt?
Islam.
Egypt is the sons of Hagar. Right? It's the sons of Hagar. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's It's Egypt. Egypt also represents Hagar, and Islam is the sons of Hagar, right? So there's going to be, for some reason, Egypt comes and distracts the Babylonians. And so the Babylonians had to deal with Egypt. And during that time, the Jews did not keep the Sabbath rest, right? And then when the siege was broken, right? When the Babylonians came again, that's like when Titus came again. Titus came again, and then Titus destroyed the temple. And then also Nebuchadnezzar, with his general Nebuzaradan, he destroyed the temple. And you know what? It's not like it's 3.5 years. It would have been incredible if it was 3.5 years, but that was actually 18 months, right? That was 18 months. But you can see it's a type. What happened during the siege of Jerusalem, during the time of Zedekiah, and during the time of Titus, is so close. It's similar. And then we can see what happens. There's a time that they have the ability, because the siege was broken for a time. And another thing that the story about what happened during the time of Zedekiah is that, Islam is going to be attacking and distracting, right, America. All right? And what else? God's people is going to start breaking the Sabbath rest. And they're going to be exalting the first day also. All right? Okay. All right. Now we look at this in the timeline of Jesus. Look at the timeline of Jesus, right? That's where they had to choose between Jesus and Barabbas when Jesus was being crucified. And his ministration on earth was 3.5 years. And then that's because from his baptism was 3.5 years. All right? To the time that Stephen was stoned is another 3.5 years. All right? From the time of the temple was being restored, 69 weeks until the time that he was baptized. And after that, 7 years, which is the 70th week. Okay? For 69, right? 69 weeks, and then 1 week, right? This is the 70 weeks, right? 70 weeks. Right? That's 70 weeks. But he made a prediction also. He also made a prediction what's going to happen to their temple. So the temple was restored, was being restored here, right? And at the end, the temple was destroyed, right? The temple was destroyed, right there. And he called this generation, this last generation from here to here. And there's another 3.5 years right at the end, where they had I'm controlling two computers here, so okay, there you go. For 3.5 years, there's a time here. There's 3.5 years. You see the beginning, there's a 3.5 of this last generation. There's a 3.5 also here. Okay, that's significant. We can go into that a little bit more, but it's just so incredible what happens in the beginning of the restoration, and then at the end when the temple is destroyed. Here's the restoration in the time of Artaxerxes, 70 weeks, and then there's one generation right here. And the temple is destroyed. Okay? All right. Now, we're going to go to the part that I was uh, about the Deuteronomy 28, right? Deuteronomy 28. We are living in the time of the end. This is from Testimonies, Volume 9, Chapter 11. Oh, you know what? Remember, this is the one also that Ellen White said, the fire engines will not be able to stop the fire in New York. Okay, this is from the same chapter, right? But she was saying, we are living in the time of the end. The fast fulfilling signs of the times declare that the coming of Christ is near at hand. The days in which we live are solemn and important. The Spirit of God is gradually but surely being withdrawn from the earth. Plagues and judgments are already falling, okay? So even in our time, the plagues and judgments are already falling, okay? So they're falling already, okay? Right. We go to great controversy. The plagues upon Egypt when God was about to deliver Israel were similar in character to those more terrible and extensive judgments which are to fall upon the world. Okay, so the plagues of Egypt is like the 7 plagues. But you know what? The 7 plagues are already falling now, even now, little by little. It's not like it's big. So, okay, so what does that mean? So that even now, the 10 plagues are falling. Right? Do you see the connection? Right? The 10 plagues of Egypt is like the last 7 plagues. And the last 7 plagues are already falling now. It means, what does it mean? The 10 plagues are also falling now. Okay? The 10 plagues of Egypt are already falling now. Okay? All right. And to see this, you can see it in the book of Deuteronomy. Remember, Ellen White said it's in the book of Deuteronomy that it is predicted that you are going to eat your children. All right? So we go to book of Deuteronomy. All right? Book of Deuteronomy 28, that's a long chapter actually. But I had to break it down. When you start reading it, then you realize, hey, you know what? This looks so familiar because this is just like the 10 plagues of Egypt. All right, let's look at the book of Deuteronomy. And this book is the book that Josiah found in the temple, right? He found it in the most holy place. Remember his high priest? He found the book and then he read it to Josiah, right? Okay. All right, we go to verse 15 and 21. Well, we're going to go in order, but I broke it down which comes in order, right? It comes in a certain order, and this order is very important, right? Deuteronomy 28, it comes in a certain order, right? Okay, it first talks about 4 different set of curses, right? 4 types of curses, right? But it actually says, but it shall come to pass that if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God to observe, to do all these commandments and statutes which I shall command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee, and I will overtake thee. You're going to receive all these curses, right? Deuteronomy 28. Okay, and what are these curses? You're going to start seeing there's 4 sets of curses. But it's going to start with verse 21. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee. You're going to get pestilence. All right? Pestilence is what? You got to look up pestilence. It's called, I think it's, you pronounce it the bear. Okay? Pestilence is the bear in Hebrew. The bear. Okay? You're going to get pestilence. All right? Whether you go or wherever you're going to go, you're going to get pestilence. All right? Okay. Then you go to verse 22 and 25. What are these pestilence? It's consumption. All right. For those who are nurses, what's consumption? It's tuberculosis. Consumption is when it actually eats your body until you become skin and bones. right? Okay, and you're going to get a fever. You're going to get inflammation and extreme burning. There's a fever and an extreme fever. Wow. What does it sound like? You're going to get a fever and you get extreme fever. What does that sound like? Does it sound like maybe a malaria or something? And you're going to get inflammation. And with the sword and with blasting and with mildew. Oh, even your what? You're going to get blasting and mildew. You're going to get mold. Oh my. Right? And the heaven is over thy head shall be brass and the earth shall be iron. You're going to get brass and iron. That's what. That is blasting and iron. That's okay. That's a symbol of. Okay, that's a symbol of you are going to be subjected to another country who's going to siege you and is going to make you slaves. All right? And you're going to run and flee 7 ways. Wow. But the biggest thing about it is it's going to be a pestilence. And it's going to be a consumption and fever, inflammation with burning. It's going to be a pestilence that's with all kinds of fevers. All right? Okay. Pestilence, when you look at pestilence, is deber. You saw, and then you go to the 7 plagues, right? Now you go to the 7 plagues. Where is the bear in the 7 plagues?
You have to change.
Did I change it? Okay, all right, here you go. I'm going to give you, in Deuteronomy, it says, I'm going to give you the bear. Where is the bear in the 10 plagues of Egypt? It is the diseases of animals. It's called murrain. Murrain is the bear. Okay? So in Deuteronomy it says, I'm going to give you the bear. The bear is animal diseases. You're going to get all kinds of animal diseases. All right? That's what Deuteronomy says. Because the bear is diseases during the 10 plagues of Egypt is the animal disease. It's right here. Okay? It's right there. I'm going to put it right there. Okay? This is the line of Deuteronomy. Okay? Deuteronomy line is right there. Okay? You look at this. This is the 10 plagues down here. This is Deuteronomy. This is animal disease. You're going to get animal disease. All right? Animal disease is right here. Okay? All right. But then, when you look at the book of Exodus, there's 2 times that it says, there's actually 3 times, but there's another time that it says you're going to receive the bear again. Okay, let's do it over here. Right? In Exodus, in verse 14, you look at Exodus 9, verse 14. I'm going to send you all the plagues when he was standing right here. Right? When he was standing just before the 7th plague, Moses says, God said to Moses, I'm going to send you all the plagues, and I will send you what? Pestilence. I will send you all the plagues and also pestilence. In other words, what? The bear or the murrain is going to happen again within this time period. Within this time period, the animal diseases is going to happen. Okay, what does that mean? Animal diseases are going to keep coming over and over again. Okay, animal diseases come over here, but it's going to be repeated again in this time. Right? It's going to come here and we repeat it here again. Okay? I can't believe this. This is directly from the Bible. Right? Directly from the Bible. Okay, now we go, what's the next one? Right? Animal diseases come and it's going to be repeated. Right? Okay, what's the next one? and thy carcasses shall be meat, and the fowls of the air. The Lord will smite thee with botch, and emerods, and scab, and itch, and a botch. Wow, all kinds of sicknesses. Okay, a botch is like a boils, right? Right? Botch is like a boil. Okay, what is emerods? What is emerald? Okay, here's like a, okay, I got pictures, you know. Just because I see this in the hospital a lot. Auntie Maria, you see this a lot, Auntie Maria, in the ER? These are botches, like ulcers, all right? What about emerods? What's an emerod? Emerald is actually inflamed lymph glands. Inflamed lymph glands. Okay? It actually shows in the Bible. All right? You get it? These are inflamed lymph glands. Your glands become very big. During the time of the Black Plague, these become black. When they were dying of Black Plague, these emerods were becoming very big. Right? These emerods right here. And it's on their necks, in their armpits, in their groins, in their legs. They become big and black. All right? Big and black. That's why they're called the Black Plague. Right? And they're going to get scabs and itches. All right? Okay, I got that. You know, scabs and itches. Right? This is what are you going to get? All right? Okay, where are the emerods? You have to look up. This is so interesting. The emerods is, okay, you got to go to the story of Samuel, 1 Samuel. Remember when the Philistines, they took away the ark? And the Philistines had the ark? Right? And then they suddenly developed what? They had inflamed emerods, which is their lymph glands became so large and become so inflamed. And they said, okay, how do we get rid of this? You know what? We have to make a golden sacrifice to our emerods and also the mice. Because why? They understand that their emerods is because it's transmitted because of what? The mice. How is the Black Plague transmitted? By the rats. If only the people in the Dark Ages had their Bibles, they would have known that their Black Plague is caused by the mice, because the Bible already taught that 4,000 years before, during the time of Samuel and the Philistines. Right? They should have known that. You know, and they said what? You know, these emerods happened to the Egyptians and Pharaoh already. We don't want to have these things. It's the time of the plagues of Egypt, right? Wow. Okay, these emerods. Okay. All right, in Exodus 9, during the time of the the time of the plagues of Egypt, right? The boils, blains, the boils and blains. The boils is the same thing like the botch and the boils. Is the same word, right? Is the boils and the blains. The infections that they got were the same kind of infections that is in Deuteronomy. Okay? So the animal diseases followed by all kinds of infections, right? Of human infections that they get, right? This is what you're going to get when you do not follow the law of God, all right? Okay. What happened next? Now you're going to be in darkness. The blind, you're going to be in blindness, and the blind gropeth in darkness, and before thine eyes you cannot even see. Even if it's in front of your face, you can't see. Your eyes will look and will fail. So what is that? It's a darkness. Okay, but wait a minute. That sounds a little unusual, because where's the darkness during the 10 plagues? The darkness is over here, right? That's the 9th plague. But in Deuteronomy, the darkness happens after the infections. You know what? That's why I made a gap right there. I made a gap right there, because the sequence is a little different. Okay, and this is very significant. The sequence is a little different. Okay, right. So here's the darkness. Okay, animal infections, human infections, and there's a darkness right there. This is in Deuteronomy, right? This is in Deuteronomy. Okay. All right. Now let's go back to Deuteronomy again. Just so I make it myself, I'm not confused, I put this graphic over here. This is the book that was read to Josiah, right? After that, the fruit of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest. Okay, there's going to be a nation that you do not know, is going to come that your fathers do not know, and is going to make you serve the gods of wood and stone. Okay? There's going to be a nation, there's going to be a country that's going to come to you and is going to make you worship the God of wood and stone. Okay, what does that mean? How does that relate to the 10 plagues of Egypt? Okay, there's a nation that is going to come. Okay, the 10 plagues. The 10 plagues is almost like the 7 last plagues. And the 7 last plagues is also like the trumpets. All right? Okay, I'm just telling you, how do we figure it? How do we figure out that this is like what is happening here? Okay? It's like the trumpets. And now in Exodus 9, Moses stretched forth his rod and toward heaven, and Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran along upon the ground. And there was hail. Okay, that's the 7th plague, right? So how does a nation that comes and wants to rule you and make you serve another god is like thunder and hail and fire? Do you remember a nation that comes like thunder and hail and fire during the 7 trumpets? It's like what? It's like the Goths, right? It's like a nation that comes and wants to subdue you, right? But this nation here wants to make you to serve the God of wood and stone. Okay, there's going to be a nation that comes to you and wants to make you serve the God of wood and stone. All right. Okay, the God of, all right. Remember, this is the hail that hit the barley harvest, right? Remember that? That's the 7th plague. Okay. What is the God of wood and stone? It's idols of false doctrines and theories, as to fashion an idol of wood and stones. So there's false doctrines and theories is like an idol of wood and stone. It's a philosophical idol. It's those who deify nature. It has something to do with now worshiping nature. Right? It's nature worship. There's going to be a country that comes and tells you, you know what? God is angry with you. Why? Because all these natural disasters are coming. We have to worship a God that controls the nature. It's the nature worship. Do you see this? Is this too much of a stretch maybe? Wow. It's about nature worship. Worshipping the God of wood and stone is actually a country, right? Is the papacy is coming and is going to lead the world to have a war against global warming? Is that happening? To worship the God of wood and stone? To worship the God of nature? Is that coming? That's right there. Right? Okay. That's the next right there. It's nature worship. Right? It's nature worship. Because so much what? So much natural disaster is going to come. Okay, what's coming next? The locust. In Deuteronomy said the next thing that comes is locust. It's going to eat everything. All right? Okay. Is that the same thing at the time of the 10 plagues? The locust, it eats all the herb of the land. Okay. All right. Here's the locust. Okay. Right. And it's gonna, here's the locust that eats the herb of the land. What's the herb of the land? What's herbs? Where does it say you have to eat the herbs of the earth? That's your food, right? You're supposed to eat the herb of your, yeah, that's your food. Yeah. But after sin, right? No, the herbs of the land is supposed to be, in the beginning, what was the herb of the land supposed to be given to? The animals, right? It's supposed to be, the animals supposed to be eating the herb of the land. But when after sin happened, people now have to eat the herb of the land, right? So, because they have sin, now they have to eat the herb of the land. Why do they have to eat the herb of the land? The herbs are like the vegetables. It's your medicine, right? You know, during this time, there's not going to be medicine because the locust is going to come in and destroy the herb of the land. And it comes through brought in by the east wind. Okay. It's going to be coming at the east wind. All right. The interesting thing about this is that when the locusts come in, brought in by the east wind, does the locust die in Egypt? Does the locust die in Egypt? No, it doesn't die. Right? It does not actually die. This is so amazing. What happened to the locust? Another power coming from the west will drive the locust back to the Red Sea. Right? So what happened to the locust? The locust comes in, destroys your vegetables and your medicine supply and the rest, everything that was not destroyed by the hail. And then what? It's restrained. It's driven back. Boy, that's amazing, huh? Okay. All right, what happens next? Oh, this is the one that's so amazing. Now Deuteronomy 28. Right? Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and nakedness and want of all things. And you shall put a yoke of iron. Who is this? The one that comes with a yoke of iron. A nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as an eagle flieth. Which nation is this? Is Rome, right? A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, because it speaks what? Latin. A nation of fierce countenance. That's that fierce countenance. That's Rome, right? We shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young, and shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land, and thou be destroyed, right? And he shall besiege thee. What? He will besiege your cities and your high fenced walls, right? What is this? Rome coming. And it will besiege your cities and your walls, right? What is this a symbol of? And what is it going to do? And what is going to happen according to Deuteronomy? And you're going to have to eat your children. And the flesh of its children you shall eat, because you have nothing left to eat, right? You're going to have to eat. It's going to besiege you. After the Sunday law, you're going to have to suffer through your great time of tribulation, where you're going to have to eat your children. This is the Sunday law. So, okay. All right. What happens at the time of the 10 plagues? What's the last plague? The firstborn dies. It's the children die. In the time of Jerusalem, at the Babylonian time, they have to eat their children. During this time, the children die because of the destroying angel, right? So this all lines up with the Sunday law, right? Lines up with the Sunday law, right? Okay, so if this is the Sunday law right there, right? This is Sunday law, okay? That's the Sunday law right there. Before the Sunday law, we will see what? Animal diseases. There's going to be animal diseases, right? So now for us who have been studying, if this is the Sunday law, what's this gap right here? What's this time right here? This is midnight cry. Okay? Right? That's midnight. This is midnight cry. What's this time right here? What's the third plague? That's the finger of God. So what's the finger of God? This is midnight. Okay? If this is midnight cry, and this is Sunday law. The animal diseases will be big time after midnight. Right? If this is midnight, there's going to be animal diseases. And what's going to happen also? Moses said, the pestilence will come again during this time. Okay? Pestilence is going to come again, right? Before the Sunday law, pestilence is going to come again, right? This pestilence will be repeated here. Okay, so what are the reasons? Ellen White calls it. What are the pretexts for the Sunday law? Why are they making this Sunday law? What are the reasons for making this Sunday law? It's what? Because there's natural disasters, right? What else? There's going to be animal diseases, and there's Islam that is attacking, and you have no medicine. All these reasons combined together will make a pretext for why it's an excuse to make a Sunday law right here. Can you imagine? This is already predicted in the Bible. Animal diseases. Are we suffering an animal disease right now? We're right here still. COVID-19 is right here. This is not big, because what's going to happen? Animal disease is going to come here. This is midnight. Before midnight cry, animal disease is going to come again. And then animal disease is going to happen here again. Right? Animal diseases, we are living right here. Because we are living right here. Animal diseases is going to happen here. And it's going to happen here again. And remember how these things come as a woman in travail, meaning what? Is get more severe. How does Islam attack? Psalms 48. Like a woman in travail. So how the disease is going to come? If it comes here, it's going to get more severe here. And it's going to get even more severe here. To the point that it becomes a reason why people were going to have They want a Sunday law. The reason why, what happens? Remember when we studied last week? Why was it that what was happening during the time of the plagues in the Justinian times? They find out, oh boy. And then they also said during the time of the 1300s, look at all these Jews, look at all these Sabbath keepers, they're not getting the plague. You know what happens? This is from the 4th to the 7th, from the 4th to the 10th here. These last 7 plagues, these are the last 7 plagues, right? Last 7 plagues of Egypt. Do not happen to what? Do not fall on Goshen. So people who are in Goshen do not get the plagues, right? They do not get the plagues. That's why the people go, you know, these Sabbath keepers, they're not getting the plagues. We're going to blame them for actually poisoning our wells. And this is why we are getting the plagues. So the Sabbath keepers are blamed because they don't get the plagues. They are blamed as a cause for the plagues. Right? Because what they're doing, they're living in Goshen. In the country, right? They're living in Goshen. And what are the animal diseases going to come? The natural disaster is going to come, and Islam going to attack. Can you imagine if you have COVID plus Islam plus natural disasters? All 3 happen at the same time. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? The country says we have to have, God is really angry at us. We are going to have to have a Sunday law. We have to rest. Right? We have to have a Sunday law. They will want a Sunday law, right? Okay. All right. Wow, pretty amazing. So if somebody asks you, is COVID-19 going to happen again? What is your answer? I know from the Bible. What does the Bible say? Is it going to happen again? Now are you going to say, is it going to be more severe? What does the Bible say? What does line upon line say? Right? What happens when COVID-19 with 9/11 and the fires and the hurricanes and the tornadoes all come at the same time? It's Sunday law. It's a pretext for Sunday law, right? Wow. Okay. So we did this. We're going back to the place that we were already before. Sorry that it's just going a little bit longer, but this is such an interesting and timely message. But it's a presentation. This study is so amazing, so appropriate for our times. All right. So before we go, there, let me return one what? Okay. See this darkness here? There's a darkness here, and there's a darkness here. And in between those darkness is when natural disasters, animal diseases, and Islam. Right? This is the darkness here, and here's the darkness here. Between these 2 darknesses is the 3 pretexts. Right? You see that? So what are those 2 darknesses? What are those 2 darknesses? There's 2 darknesses. All right? You know what? Those 2 darknesses is the image of the beast and image to the beast. Image of the beast happens at the midnight cry. Image to the beast happens at Sunday law. So between midnight cry and Sunday law is going to be natural disasters. COVID is going to be even worse, and Islam is going to attack. All right?
That makes sense.
Wow. You know, this is a busy slide, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right? Sorry, I've this is from a different line. Okay, this is the time of Jesus. Jesus said, "You know what? When I am going to when I'm going to go away and be away from you, you're going to be sad as a woman in travail." You know, a woman in travail. Right? A woman in travail. Wow. Where did Jesus borrow that language? From Psalms 48. When the woman on travail comes, it's going to be an east wind, right? Right? An east wind is like a woman in travail, right? Jesus said, when I'm away from you, when I'm dead inside the grave, it's like a woman in travail. So between the midnight cry and the Sunday law is a woman in travail. That's Jesus' own words. And he says, you know, during that Sabbath, there was a council between the priests and Pilate. They all came together, all right? Right there. They all came together. And during that Sabbath, what? They put a seal right on the grave of Jesus, right? And then during that Sabbath, there was no healing in the temple because Jesus was not healing. He was dead in the grave. There's no healing. Right? Remember? People are going to suffer these diseases and there's not going to be any healing. Right? Between midnight cry and Sunday law. Right. Okay, this is midnight cry. And then, you know, that's the midnight cry, midnight cry, right? And that's now at the time of this is the time of the 10 plagues, right? This is the time of the 10 plagues, right? That's the Passover. All right, that's the angel of death that comes, and that's the midnight cry, when Pharaoh had to cry with a loud voice because his son had died. All right, and then they were delivered, and they went out with 2 pillars, right? 2 pillars, pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud, right? And they went to the Red Sea, and then when they got to the Red Sea, what opened up the Red Sea?
East wind.
It was the east wind, right? The east wind opened up the Red Sea so that there was one wall on one side and there's another wall on the other side, right? The darkness on one side, the darkness on the other side. There's a wall on one side, there's a wall on the other side. In the middle is the east wind. The east wind opened up a way for the Israelites to go through. Okay? There's going to be one wall on one side and one wall on the other side. In the middle is the east wind opening up the way. All right? Okay, where are we at here? Okay, I'm getting close to, oh yeah, here you go. Before that, there's locust already right here. Oh, this is 9/11. Okay. What about Balaam? Balaam, he had to go in between 2 walls of the vineyard. One wall on one side and the other wall on the other side, right? That's Balaam. Okay, let's see where I'm at. Right? And the donkey had to be restrained, right, in between those 2 walls. Remember the locust? The locust came and the locust was driven back. Balaam, between the 2 walls, his donkey stopped and his donkey had to be restrained. He had to restrain his donkey right in the middle of those 2 walls. All right? Yeah. Okay. What about the story of Esther? there's 2 feasts of wine, right? Between those 2 feasts of wine, what happened? Haman had to lift up Mordecai on a horse, right? And then he built a what? All right, let me get this, all right? Haman had to lift up Mordecai on a horse, and he had to build a gallows 50 feet high, 50 cubit high, right? That was the Sunday law. The Sunday laws were starting to be made, right? Okay. Wow, a lot of lines all put together. This what becomes too busy right now, but I'll leave it at that. The 2 walls, the 2 feasts, right? The 2 darkness. That's the image of the beast and image to the beast. Between the image of the beast test and the image to the beast test, there's going to be Islam in the middle. There's going to be natural disasters, and there's going to be diseases of animals. There's going to come, and that becomes a pretext for the Sunday law. And that's when, if you do not prepare for that time, your character is not perfect at midnight, you will not be elected to hear the cry at the midnight cry, right? You have to hear the midnight cry call, right? So that you can go through the Sunday law, right? You have to be able to get ready, because at the midnight cry is your test that determines your eternal destiny, right? That your character is already perfect in Christ, perfect behind the robe of righteousness of Christ, perfect with Christ, right? And so that you can go through the fiery furnace of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You can go into the lion's den of Daniel, right? So I think I'll end it right here. And just to show that Deuteronomy 28 plus Exodus 9 and 10 shows what is going to happen in the end time, right? We're living before midnight, but we're being shown a little at a time what's going to be happening at midnight, and then at the midnight cry, and eventually just before the Sunday law. All these things are being opened a little at a time, line upon line. We do not have to guess at anything. Everything is shown to us, right? Just as long as we know how to study. And we have faith, the faith of Jesus. The faith of Jesus says, I believe that Jesus will be able to prepare me, prepare my character, so that I can go through the fiery furnace of the Sunday law, so that my eyes will be opened 7 times. So as if I have 7 eyes. I will go through the fire heated 7 times, so that then I will receive my raiment, right? Then I will receive Christ's garment. It's no longer I'm hiding behind Christ. I'm hidden in Christ. I'm hidden with Christ. No, now I receive his garment. And then I will receive the mitre on my head. When I receive that mitre, I will be sealed. For what? For eternity. Your character is sealed for eternity. Right? That's what we're looking for. But right now, through our time of justification and sanctification, Christ is preparing us to get to the Sunday law, right? And at the Sunday law, he will let us go through another bigger time of trouble, right? A bigger tests at the Sunday law, right? So that the Father can look at us and see that we have the robe of righteousness and we can go into the wedding, right? Okay. All right. Any questions? Any remarks? right? A lot of information, right? I've actually given this to the group before, and I'm repeating this for Dragon and Wrath. I've given this to the group in Indonesia, but I'm giving this to Dragon and Wrath now, right? So that is a more sure word of